Hello, I'm Rick Hertless, founder of His Gospel Power. Thank you for joining with our program as we look into the book of Daniel, chapter 5. Before we get into that book, please go to hisgospelpower.org, click on the donate button or the contact us button, and thank you to all of those who do support our ministry through your prayers and your financial gifts. Okay, we are in the book of Daniel, chapter 5. We're at the very last part of chapter 5. Now, we've already looked over the Belshazzar and how he was disobedient to God, how he was disrespectful to God, how he really was only about himself. And so now we are at let me read 5:29 that says, Then Belshazzar gave the command, they clothed Daniel with purple and a chain, put it around his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And of course, this being after Daniel told him, you have been measured and weighed and found wanting. In other words, you're going to die. That's really what was going on, what he was really saying. Well, the very next verse, that very night, Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Now, if you will look in, which I don't recommend this. I do not usually recommend Wikipedia, and I still am not recommending it. Wikipedia is a resource, but much of it has been found wanting, if you will, okay? Much of it has been weighed and found wanting. There's many things that are not necessarily correct in Wikipedia. In fact, in the universities, most universities, at least for sure Liberty University, I've heard about others, but Liberty University where I attended, you could not resource them, you could not quote them as a resource because they were unreliable. Now, according to Wikipedia, however, which is the easiest thing to look at on the net, and many kids do that, unfortunately, what that means is they're going to get fed a lie, and you get lied to enough and you're going to believe it. But what Wikipedia said here that I found was interesting, it says, Darius the Mede is mentioned in the book of Daniel as king of Babylon between Belshazzar and Cyrus the Great. But he is not known to history, and no additional king can be placed between the known figures of Belshazzar and Cyrus. Most scholars view him as a literary fiction, but some have tried to harmonize the book of Daniel with history by identifying him with various known figures, notably Cyrus or Gobrias, the general who was first to enter Babylon when it fell to the Persians in 539 BCE. I wanted to say that because there was a period of time, a long period of time, in fact, 10, 15, 20 years, when you started having the critical scholarship and all of that coming up and really questioning the Bible and the power of God is really what they're doing when that amounts to. And they said that King David was a fictional character, that there's no history, there's no history evidence that he was ever alive, historical evidence. And then I can't remember exactly when, but it was about, I think, 20 years ago or so. It could have been a little longer. I can't remember exactly when they came up with this. But as the archaeologists were digging, one day they unearthed a tell. And what was on the tell? It started talking about King David, king of the Jews. And pretty much the historians at that point had to revise everything and say, oh, I guess he was a real character. The only thing, my point is, the Bible is always right, given enough time to be able to get enough digging going on to where they actually find the character that they're looking for. And Darius is more than likely one of those.
Yeah, and I can account for just in my lifetime, I heard that they were trying to, and I'm going to say it was more the Jews because they tried to downplay Jesus. They were trying to say that Jesus, even as a person, never existed. But I know just in my lifetime, they've unearthed historical evidence of not Jesus writing, but key historical figures like kings or governors writing about Jesus. And the latest one I saw was just within the last few months, they unearthed a church, an old church. I think they said it was like 1,500 years old. And on the floor was a tile drawing that specifically talked about the Jesus feeding the 5,000 by the Sea of Galilee. And I mean, it basically worded it verbatim from the Bible about exactly what happened. So now they can't even play off that that story about what Jesus did, because now you have the evidence of Jesus and another story in the Bible. So yeah, and it's science and archaeology are proving more and more of the Bible, I think, on a quicker basis than it did. And I believe we know why, because we're getting closer to the end time, so that no man has an excuse to not believe the word. And I think that's why more things are coming out on a faster basis than they were in the past. And it's just, yeah, like you said, everything that is found that people have tried to deny are just proving more and more of the Bible.
Absolutely, because like I said, nothing has they have never had any evidential proof. Thank you. That there was anything in the Bible that is wrong. Every time they think they've found that, just exactly like maybe with Darius the Mede here. Oh, well, see, now we found something that the Bible is fictional about, and that's so. Well, so it wouldn't surprise me if maybe God in the next year or two, maybe quite real quick, there comes a new tale, and they find Darius the Mede, king of Babylon or whatever. So as they continue to be able to study and be able to continue to dig, the archaeologists continue to look, they find different things. It's always been so, I hate to use the word funny because it's not really funny, but I can't think of another word, ironic, I guess, that they will try to discredit the Bible. And it always comes right back to proving itself instead. There have been many who have tried to disprove it, but they haven't been able to.
Well, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but Darius himself is only in the next chapter of Daniel.
Right.
By the end of the chapter, Cyrus comes to power.
Right, yes.
So who knows how long he was in power? It may have been months.
It could have been a very short time.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that short time period of his history, even if it was recorded, it may just be a small snippet somewhere in a forgotten library.
It's like Alexander the Great. He conquered the known world, but there is only a few parchments of copies of his life.
Yeah.
But yet, he's not disputed as a historical figure at all. On the other hand, somebody like Darius, or anybody else just about in the Bible, there are thousands, there are 20,000 I think at this point, maybe 25, but 20,000 copies of the original copies is what I should say, original copies, because there are, with Alexander the Great, with Plato, Aristotle, all of those, there's no original, okay? There are no original parchments. There are copies, and they're original copies. Okay, so in other words, they're within that time period or whatever. But there are at least 20,000 copies of the Scripture, but yet it's discounted by historians. They say many call it fiction or whatever. We don't believe in Darius the Mede because we don't see it anywhere else. You're seeing 20,000 copies. You've got Alexander the Great or Aristotle or Socrates or any of these that really just have a few copies of their life, but yet you take them as historical fact.
Well, and I kind of laugh when supposed historians claim that we can't take the Bible as a historical document, but they'll take textbooks that were written last year about an event that happened 20 years ago that we lived through and we know they're fake.
Right.
But because they're a textbook sanctioned by a state or the federal government, we have, okay, my daughter came home this year with a history book. And history should be just a record of events. Evolution is in the textbooks for Texas as history, in the history book, not even the science or biology. It's in the actual history books now.
It's history.
So we have to accept that as history, even though it was written this last year with no historical evidence to back it up. But they won't accept a document that's 2,000 years old that has never changed and, like you said, has 20,000 corresponding references. But I have to accept evolution in the Texas high school history books.
Well, and evolution changes seemingly every year, but I know that's an exaggeration. But I do know when I was a kid, it took millions of years to make something. And then all of a sudden it was 100 million years. And then all of a sudden it was a billion years. Now it's taking billions of years.
Yeah,
probably won't be too long before it'll be trillions of years.
Well, the last I heard, the going consensus now, because I've listened to a bunch of people recently, it's 13 to 14 billion years. That's what they're up to. They're kind of leveling off at that right now.
When I was a kid, it wasn't billion because the billion wasn't a common number back then anyway, but it wasn't billions of years back then. It was millions of years. This happened millions of years. And it's like evolution seemingly changes just at a whim because it is a religion, and it is a false religion at that. That's what's going on. That's why they want to push it down our throat. Plus, if we don't believe in evolution, what do we have to believe in? God.
Right.
And if we have to believe in God, that means somebody's in control other than us. And we don't want that. Well, I got bad news for them. As far as I'm concerned, I want somebody to be in control because I can mess it up. I do mess it up pretty frequently. And without someone to turn to help me straighten it out, I'm in trouble. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll agree with me on that. You will mess it up.
Hey, and if you don't agree with me on this point, then, you have fun with evolution. But I was joking with you about this. If you believe in evolution, tell me what the Chihuahua evolved from. Right.
I mean, and of course now there are species that were, yeah, exactly. We've got a couple of Chihuahuas too, and they evolved from
nothing,
something that was annoying. But the species nothing has ever evolved out of the species.
Right.
The species of a Chihuahua, let's say, however they crossed bred something to make it happen, but it's never been. You've never started with a lizard, let's say, and ended up with a Chihuahua. Now, they say that in the history books, that's what happened, or in the science books, or whatever they're saying now, that you started with a lizard and you ended up with a Chihuahua, but that's never been proven, and they cannot reproduce that. It's never happened.
Yeah.
And plus, we've also said, I believe this too, if evolution is true, and we were supposed to evolve from lizards and fish and whatever, why do all of those things still exist?
Exactly.
I mean, every one of those, the only thing should be left
is humans.
Yeah. Because now we've evolved, and I suppose that you could make the case of different species of mammal, but supposedly every one of those evolved into a mammal. They became breathing animals, and it makes no sense. When you start looking at all of it, to me, it makes no sense. I cannot make sense out of any of it. And of course, we still have some species. They say, look at this. Now, here's species. There's some fish that walk on the ground right now, and they can actually breathe air. They have lungs and gills, and they can breathe air. And they say, see, here's proof of it. Well, wait a minute. But I thought this happened millions, even billions of years ago. And so now they should be gone. There shouldn't be any more.
Right.
What are they,
There's a difference that evolutionists won't accept. There's a difference between adaptation and evolution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you think there are different, and I'm not even going to say races, but characteristic differences in humans?
That's right.
Why is there different pigmentation? Why is there different facial features? Why are there it's adaptation.
And it's very simple to see if you travel at all. I used to go to Sweden all the time, and they would be white. Many of them were very white, except that they tan. They do artificial tanning and tanning booths because they are so white. Why? Because they don't have much sun up there. It's hardly no sun over the year. And plus, I was there for a short period of time. I would go there for 3 months at a time. And sure enough, I came home one time in December, and it was 30 degrees outside. I'm in short sleeves. I got in the van. I was hot from walking from the airport to my van. I got in my van. I rolled my window down. My wife turned to me and she said, "You're not in Sweden anymore. Roll that window up and turn the heater up." My body had acclimated. And so those things just happen. That's the way God, makes us adapt to our surroundings. Well, that's all the time that we have. Thank you for joining with us as we look into the book of Daniel. I pray that you're getting something out of this study as we're learning different things of how we live today and how we are to live for God in these last days. Until next time, I pray you receive His gospel power today.
He died for you. He died for me. From our sin, He set us free. He loved us so, His life He gave. So if we ask, we can be saved. He's calling you, He's calling you. Jesus Christ is calling you. If He's touched your heart and soul, let Jesus make you whole. Come near with me, and we will pray that all your sin be washed away.